Yo, what up? Alright, so you probably clicked on this video because you want to know what life is, or what is the ultimate reality. That there is a solid form of life and reality. There's one form of it. And every being, or every animal, or everything that lives and can perceive and can, understand things, understands this form differently. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, let's take us, for example, humans. Our brains don't show you everything that is happening. Our brains filter out information. They filter out the crap that doesn't need to be sensed. For example, we cannot really see sound. How is that? Sound is a wave, right? Wave of sounds. Why can't we see those? Why? Well, there's high probability that our brain doesn't have the power or capacity to do that, or that it is just it filters that. Well, we could also see this from a different angle. Everything we perceive is through our senses, and our senses, imagine them as lines that are connected. Every sense is connected to the brain, right? So imagine these lines going through your body into your brain. Let's imagine that. I know that's not how it works, but let's imagine it like that. Every sense brings an information to your brain which is different from the other senses. They are not combined or merged. They are different from each other, and they are different from each other because they only serve the job that they are supposed to serve. They don't combine together to give you this ultimate information that you kind of do get while on drugs. But there's a whole topic that drugs can make you see the world better, but I'm not really going to get into it because then we need to classify what type of drug, what are actually drugs, whether they're good for you or bad. And the general perception seems to be that it's bad for you. However, there are drugs like mushrooms and LSD which could help you see the ultimate reality a bit, but at the end of the day, that if we were to evolve, if our species were to evolve, we would evolve by seeing reality much more clearer. Every species that evolves into a species that could see life better, that could see the patterns in life and take advantage of the patterns and opportunities by developing these senses or these things that will help it to survive. We've so far come to this stage where our brain filters out information that is not necessary. However, what if our brain could find out the information that we right now don't see necessary, but in future the brain might see this as a necessary information? For example, people who are on LSD usually talk about how they can see sound and how they can smell colors, how the whole world is moving, and they can see the force between that and behind that, and how some people get like an outer body experience. But how does this happen? So, well, like I said, there are drugs that could enhance your vision of reality, but it's mostly to do with the way we are. It's mostly to do with how we are, and it's mostly to do with what our brain perceives. And if our brain has a combination of merged senses, then it will perceive the world differently. While you're on LSD, you don't see the world as same as someone who's sober. That's because your senses are merged. You are experiencing information that is not usually filtered out by your brain. Some argue that this information is usually nonsense and is not needed, and your brain adjusts to it by filtering this crap so you could see a more vibrant version of reality. But if this is what our brain needs to do to make us see this world, then the real world must be way different, because here's the information that we are getting from the real world into our brain through our senses, which are filtering out this information into another world. So here's the world that we are seeing, and through our brain, which is filtered out half of the information. And here's the actual world that you don't really see unless you're on drugs. And this seems to be, between it seems to be a missing gap of information that could only be touched on by making your brain a bit more relaxed or evolving. Obviously, no one is just gonna evolve like that. It's the process that takes years and millions. So reality is way way more vivid and different to what we are experiencing. And this is a common notion that everyone could think about, and it's logical to think about this. It makes sense if you actually think about it. It makes sense for our brain to, block out half the information that we don't see from the real world, because our brain is used to wanting to see the world this way. But even though we are seeing it this way, it does not yet mean that it is how it is. Cameras tend to capture a whole total different perception of what is there to what our eyes can capture, because the world is way different than what our eyes or different senses can sense. So I'm glad you watched this video, and I hope you've learned something. Keep on watching my videos and subscribe.